the easy decisions never reach the CEO. And if they do, then you're doing something fundamentally wrong, right? As a CEO, as a leader in general, doesn't even have to be a CEO. It doesn't even have to be a VP or a head of something. If you're leading, right, the easy decisions are usually the ones that your team is doing already on a day-to-day basis, leaving you with the ones where there's really not the one obvious choice anymore, right? So you're deciding between the lesser evil, so to speak. So I think that is one thing people have to be comfortable with, that it's just the nature of the business that we're in. Once you start leading, every decision is going to be difficult. I think that's one part.
Before you dive into today's episode, we have a quick favor to ask. If you enjoy what we do here at NOUVA, please take a second of your time to hit the follow or subscribe button in the app you're listening. It might seem like a small thing, but it will keep us bringing you amazing guests and quality content every month. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Now, let's get started. Hi everyone, before we begin, I just want to tell you something. Most leaders dream about just hitting a scale button and that's it. But actually, few of them realize that a broken business is just a faster way to go bankrupt. For example, in the global media landscape, we've seen products reaching 300 million users, for example, and still fail to turn it into profit because they lack the monetization engine. Today, we're not talking about growth hacks. We're actually talking about the cold and hard architecture of 9-figure deals and how to build a distribution machine that dominates 3 continents simultaneously. My name is Victor Andrés, and this is NOUVA Podcast. Today, we are joined by the man who has lived at the center of the most significant pivots in digital media. From orchestrating high-impact M&A deals for titans like Tencent and Azerion, to spearheading launches that generate 130 million euros in revenue, he's LinkedIn top voice who understands that in the next decade, you either build a platform or you become the tenant of someone else. Welcome to the show, Patrik Wilkens.
Hey, thank you so much, Victor Andrés, and also Stephanie. Really nice to be with you.
Patrik, thank you for being here. And first, we want to please enlighten us, Patrik, how your story. How do you get to where you are now today, so we can understand your background?
A combination, I think, of good timing and determination. I started in the entertainment industry in 2006. There was an advertising actually back in the days in the newspaper. Are you interested to work in the games industry was the question. And I was 21 at that time. And the answer was, hell yeah, of course I am. 20 years later, I'm still in the industry. I've been working in games for around about 15 years before the iPhone came out, when it was still feature phones. The old, I don't know if you remember, the old Nokia phones and everything else.
Yeah.
We remember.
In the museum, maybe. So yes. And then, I've been starting to first manage teams, product teams. Then later on, multiple studios as well in the gaming industry. Victor Andrés, you mentioned the sale of Shoji Mobile to Tencent, for example, and Spill Games to Azerion. All of those were M&A in the games industry. And then after Azerion bought Spill Games, that was around about 5-6 years ago, there was a question whether or not I go all in with Azerion or if I look for something else. And then the Soul Publishing back in the day is a company that really moved very strongly into the social media, into the digital first space, needed somebody to build their B2B practice. So I joined them 5 years ago. And now I'm on my own. I still work with the Soul. I work with a couple of other companies, and I'm really fortunate that over the years I had the chance to work with people that are way smarter than me. I've been participating in some amazing deals, sometimes even at the spearhead of some new strategies, and happy to share my limited knowledge with you and the audience, of course.
All right. Now I have a question. Your track record is staggering, like 20 plus project launches, over 385 million installs, but you also seen the inside of massive acquisition. Like, for example, you already said it, like Shoji Mobile and the self-publishing, what is the biggest lie leaders believe about scaling in the global market?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest lie, one of the most important learnings was actually in the back of a taxi on my way to the Schiphol airport by a good friend of mine who told me his experience that companies fail to sell on the upswing. They try to maximize it and not sell too early. But when you do that, more often than not, what happens is that you have one bad quarter, right? Doesn't even have to be negative, just has to be less growth than the quarter before or stagnating growth, which, in the period of 2, 3, 5, whatever years is not necessarily a bad thing. But M&A or in the M&A business, people will immediately look for it. They will wait for another quarter. And if that quarter doesn't significantly improve, you do not have a growth story anymore. So, it's not a lie, but one of the biggest learnings that I could share is, try to sell or aim to sell on the upswing. Don't aim for the last 2% of efficiency. Usually that turns negative faster than everybody expects.
Interesting. I want to ask you. Well, you publish extensively on the creator economy, and why, Patrik? Why is the legacy corporate mindset so fundamentally incapable of keeping up with the speed of modern content distribution? They are sometimes very squared, and they don't want to pop up and to be different and not be afraid.
A really good question, and I believe there's multiple factors involved in this. One is almost convenience, right? If you work in a legacy business for 5, 10, 15 years, you might not be incentivized, or you might not be in the mood anymore, in the mindset anymore to do significant shifts. Another one is that often in more established businesses, and that's not a negative thing, it is just a fact, in more established businesses, the KPIs you're optimizing for are more bottom line than top line. It's more profitability than it is actually growth. And I also believe that often, unfortunately, and this is an issue for small and medium enterprises as well, if you have the wrong culture, often it is more about avoiding mistakes, than winning opportunities. And winning opportunities, I mean, obviously on LinkedIn, and in my bio in particular, I focus on the wins. I could write a way longer LinkedIn profile about all the things where I made the wrong decisions, so to speak. So again, I think that's the third point for organizations. If you focus your team and if you don't, encourage making mistakes and learn from them, I do believe it is very, very difficult to actually participate in any meaningful growth opportunity that requires doing something significantly different.
Yeah, before Victor asks a question, I want to ask you, that's so true, because we have been, Patrik, here in Central America, we have sitting around with general managers and CEOs of medium and small and medium-sized companies, and they always are afraid of, for example, now the AI, they want to integrate it, but they are afraid of stepping forward because they don't want to lose money. So how do you balance that fear and losing money, and how do you know the ROI? Because those people, especially the CFO, he wants to know how much it is and how much would I return. But how as a person or a provider can get to those companies and say, okay, you will return this and you will have that, because, well, AI is so new and it's so difficult to have that monetary budget and all of that. But I want to know your take on that.
Very good question. And I do believe something that all of us are feeling, right? Nobody wants to be wrong. Nobody wants to make a mistake. And especially After a while in your career, you're not just responsible for yourself, you're responsible, of course, for your immediate family, right? Meaning your actual family. I'm not pretending that work necessarily is a family, but you're also responsible for the team. And in many cases, once you're the CEO, you're responsible for way more than that, right? The entire company. So it's not as easy anymore as, there are no easy decisions, I would say. That's another thing I've learned from a mentor and the CEO of mine. The easy decisions never reach the CEO, and if they do, then you're doing something fundamentally wrong, right? As a CEO, as a leader in general, doesn't even have to be a CEO. It doesn't even have to be a VP or a head of something. If you're leading, right, the easy decisions are usually the ones that your team is doing already on a day-to-day basis, leaving you with the ones where there's really not the one obvious choice anymore, right? So you're deciding between the lesser evil, so to speak. So I think that is one thing people have to be comfortable with, that it's just the nature of the business that we're in. Once you start leading, every decision is going to be difficult. I think that's one part. And the other one is, and I think I'm quoting Band of Brothers here. There was a scene when without going into the details, but I think the quote was more or less, he wasn't a bad leader because he made bad decision. He was a bad leader because he made no decisions. And that is something that struck me because it's close to home. Sometimes there is too little data. Other times there's too much data. And, you avoid making a decision because you're not entirely sure. Usually it's better to make the wrong decision than to make no decision. Because once you do a wrong decision, at the very least, you get new data points a month from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and then you can, make another decision. And sorry for quoting everybody else but myself here. I think it was Jeff Bezos who said, who talked about problems and decisions as I think it was one-way or two-way doors, meaning, is it a decision that you can easily or reasonably revert in the future? That is something that I try to really internalize for myself. Whenever I'm nervous or concerned about making a decision, first of all, I'm reminded of that quote about making no decision is worse. And then I'm also reminded of Jeff Bezos saying, hey, if it is a decision that you can reasonably revert in the future, just go for it. And worst case, you have to, move 2-3 steps back and you learn from it. That really helped me tremendously whenever I come into this situation where you're a little bit like a deer in the headlight and you're getting paralyzed. I'm trying to remind myself of those two quotes usually.
Amazing. Yeah.
Great. Now, Patrik, the founder of Motivable Consulting, you guided startups through fundraising rounds up to 5 million euros. In your opinion, what is the one red flag in startups GTM strategy that tells you that they will never reach the Fortune 500 level you're used to deal with?
It's a really good question. The number one mistake, there are many mistakes you can do, clearly. The number one, I think not failing big enough, since we already talk about decision, is I've seen myself in the run-up of establishing the Moneyball Consulting. I obviously thought about my own business cases, my own business plans and everything else. And I've been reminded while creating those plans that I'm playing it, very safe and very incremental and, to be fair, also very slow. It's like a very reasonable growth plan over the next 5 years. One business chases the next. There's nothing wrong with it. On paper, it's actually the perfect approach. But you get older and time is running out, and there's only so much hours that you have available to work, and so many. So I would say this is one. Like if you don't dream big enough, and if you don't go aggressive enough into the market, that usually is a sign that it's not that you're not going to be successful, but you're talking about Fortune 500, right? So
yeah.
It's not you're not successful, but you're probably not going to be the number one in the field that you're addressing. For example, maybe one more hands-on example. Over the last 5 years, 6 years almost, we've done amazingly, as this publishing with various partners, creating content for social media and growing channels. Some of the channels are the largest channels, in the world right now with over 300 million subscribers. Other channels that we've done together with brands, they do exceptionally well, with over 1, 2, 3, 4, million subscribers, billions of views. And in order to achieve that, there's a certain amount of hours that you need to produce, a certain amount of people you need to have in order to, iterate and improve and, build a team basically. And I see that a lot when companies are concerned about this type of investment. And it doesn't mean that they're not going to have a good YouTube channel. It just means that they're not going to have a top 10 YouTube channel. So if you're saying, I don't want a top 10 YouTube channel, fair enough, do maybe half or a quarter or, or 10% of what has been recommended, and you're still going to have a good YouTube channel, but you're not going to be playing in, using the Champions League as example, or the, in Middle America, you don't really have Champions League, right? That's a European thing. What's the equivalent, the football analogy in Middle America? What is that?
Well, it's still called championship. It's not it's not a specific championship. It's called cup.
Cup. Okay.
Yeah,
different topic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I want to ask you, because you are in the business of relationships, meeting people and selling and negotiation and all of that. So I want to ask you, because myself, I'm curious about this. So Patrik, when you are in front of a CEO of these big companies, of course, before you get to that, you have a lot of gatekeepers, a lot of cold emails, perhaps, or a lot of no's to get to the CEO. There's a lot of steps and layers. So when you get to that meeting and when you are sitting there, and how do you have, and you create that authority, but also humbleness inside that room, talking to the CEO about your services and businesses and how you can help him to get what he wants, and negotiate smoothly. What is your, for example, your guide or your step-by-step guide that you can guide us today?
One thing, Stephanie, if I may, your assumption is actually not accurate. If I'm allowed to say it this way, I've been spending a lot of time, obviously, networking and building a network. Today, usually, it is a warm introduction that another CEO does to, a friend, or, somebody contacts me directly due to my LinkedIn, presence and the newsletter and stuff. So I'm fortunately enough in a position where I do not have many gatekeepers before I actually talk to the CEOs. Another fortunate situation that comes with age. And also starting in an industry that back in the days was actually fairly young, is that a lot of the people that have been, like junior, whatever, managers with me together back in the days, 20 years later, they're actually doing pretty good. So, a lot of times it's also just people that you met along the way. And this is why you mentioned that I'm in the business of relationships 100%. Like, it matters so much to have, very briefly, in this world today, it does seem that, big beats small, unfortunately. Luckily, in business, to my experience, it is still about whatever word you want to use. Maybe you want to use karma, you want to use reputation, whatever that word is, but it still matters that you try to add value to every conversation. And so many times before I do business, and I also know that this is what most other decision makers do. you check the references, but you don't check by asking me, hey, Patrik, are you the best? Is your service the best? Of course, it's the best service. Of course, I'm the best person, clearly, but it is about asking other people, hey, I worked with this guy, or did you work with this guy, or this woman, whatever. So this is really important, that reputation matters so much. And back to your original question, sorry for the long answer. A lot of times you are in the room because people already believe that you're qualified. So this is kind of like the base layer of confidence that you need to bring into the conversation, right? Mm-hmm. And then obviously you will have made enough, mistakes, and you will have made, enough success cases in the past that theoretically and hopefully you're quick on your toes, and you're just able to read the room and make recommendations that are beneficial. And everybody has its own sales strategy, so I'm not going to tell anybody that my strategy is the right strategy. It's definitely the right strategy for me. I wouldn't change it. Mm-hmm. If I don't believe that what I'm offering, or what the teams that I manage, or the companies that I represent, if I don't believe that there is an added value, I'm usually the first one to highlight that and to tell people, maybe to go with competitor A, B, C, D. And usually I know somebody at the competitor, so I make an introduction, and if karma works, then maybe in a year from now and 5 years from now, somebody makes an introduction to me, and that usually is how I'm most comfortable in meetings.
Okay, yeah, basically knowing your product that really will add value to that person, and you will make your life easier to that person, to that CEO, to that vice president, easier, your services. Yeah, like owning your beliefs, your strategy, that you have to be confident. You have to be confident.
Yes, and maybe for some of the listeners, before they think this is out of I can also reframe it. Know your USP, right? Know what your core item is, that you're 100% the best, right? And double down on that one, and don't sweat the small stuff, right? Like, don't try to break your neck, trying to sell something that is not in your core competency. Because usually it is another company that can do that better, and you just spend valuable time and valuable credit, by the way, with the decision maker of a large organization, that it's very, very unlikely that it can sell to, right?
Totally.
Right. Yeah, I think you can call it like a golden rule, basically speaking, that for your golden rule, basically, for negotiation. But I wanted to ask you also, in that same term, your golden rules. What are your golden rules for moving the needle during the negotiation, when the numbers are starting to go bigger and bigger, like having 8 or 9 zeros, and you're like, okay, wow, it's a big project.
Yes. I mean, the numbers get bigger, true. And if you talk about a million, you talk about 100 million, talk about $1 billion. At one point, you sit down and you reflect, what that actually means in terms of investment, in terms of people, in terms of resource, but also more importantly, in terms of impact on the industry, right? And I think it's just really important that you that you look beyond the numbers and you look into the value that you create. And once you do that, right, it doesn't really matter if you do something for 10 euros or for, fair enough, 10 euros wouldn't pay the bills, but you get the point, right? It doesn't really matter if it is 100 million or if it's 100 billion. It matters that you make an impact on the industry, and that this impact is meaningful going forward, and that it enables you, right, to do the next deal and the deal afterwards. Because to be fair, unless it's 100% your company and you take a meaningful chunk of this, $1 billion in deal facilitation fees, you need to probably do a few more deals in the future anyway.
Got it. Okay. Well, right now we're actually reaching the conclusion of the podcast. I just want to tell you guys, strategic innovation is about discipline. It's about discipline, the signing of an ecosystem. Patrik, your ability to turn digital influence into a massive global revenue is the blueprint for the next generation of leaders. Thank you so much for joining us, sharing your story with us, your advices. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you so much. But before we close, Patrik, we have one last question to you. What is the best advice you've ever received?
It's probably two pieces of advice that one of them I appreciated from the first moment, and the other one I only understood, a couple of years later. They both came actually from my father. The first one was priorities. He kept repeating this every time I did something that I shouldn't have done, playing PC before I, finished homework, or playing water polo before I finished my football training. So priority is incredibly important. And the other one is, again, thanks to my late father, relationship. He said it in German, but the English translation will probably be along the lines of, relationship only hurts if you don't have any. And for me, with my background, it was one of the most meaningful things I've ever done is to cultivate a network on LinkedIn. I organize a lot of breakfasts. I bring a lot of people together. I always try to get in a way, be the dumbest person in the room and find people that are, significantly, smart and more accomplished around me. And that helped me in my career over the years so many times that I can't count anymore. So many of my quotes are actually from other people, and I internalized their learnings. So that's probably the two advices that I can give to the next generation, so to speak.
Thank you so much, Patrik, for your vision, your energy as well, your humbleness. We can see it. We can clearly see it. So thank you for helping us in being here, and hopefully it won't be the last time we can meet each other, and hopefully in person. Who knows? But thank you. And I'm your host, Stephanie, and this has been NOUVA Podcast. Thank you so much, Patrik, for the time.
We close this chapter. But now, there's a next step to do, applying it to your life. Knowledge that isn't used is just noise. Don't live here with a notebook full of ideas. Live here with a plan to change one thing in your routine tomorrow. Ask yourself, from everything we discussed here today, what idea resonated with me enough to put into practice? Don't wait for the future. Create it today. This is NOUVA Podcast. See you in the next episode.